There is damage you cannot see. It leaves no bruise. It shows no scar. It does not scream. It hides under skill, under humor, under the person who fixes everything, then goes home in silence. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the part of you shaped in the dark, shaped by what you did not get. Generation X was born between 1965 and 1980. This is not nostalgia. This is not praise for toughness. This is about what happens to a child who learns early that the adults are not watching. That is the real story. Not flannel shirts, not mixtapes, not sarcasm. The real story is this. Millions of children came home to empty houses, day after day, year after year, and silence became normal. Picture a Tuesday in 1977. A 9-year-old girl walks home alone. She keeps her house key in her sock. She opens the door. The house is quiet. The air smells like old coffee. She makes a peanut butter sandwich. She cuts it wrong. The halves do not match. She pauses. No one sees it. No one comments. No praise. No blame. She eats. She turns on the TV. Nothing dramatic happened. No one hurt her. But something formed in that kitchen. Sigmund Freud said the mind is shaped by what repeats quietly. Not by big events, by small, steady patterns. Moments so normal they feel invisible. That girl built a belief that day. Not loud, not extreme. Just this. I am alone. This is how life works. Here is why that matters. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote that pain alone does not break us. Pain without meaning breaks us, but pain absorbed into identity becomes part of the self. Gen X did not just grow up alone. They grew up during divorce spikes. Between 1960 and 1980, rates doubled. They watched fathers lose jobs after decades of loyalty. They did nuclear drills at school. They hid under desks from bombs. Then math class continued. The message stayed the same. The ground is shaky. Adults are unsure. You are on your own. Arthur Schopenhauer believed most people cling to illusions. They trust systems. They trust titles. They trust that rules protect them. Gen X lost those illusions early. And something rare happened. They did not collapse. They did not quit. They adapted. They learned to function without full trust. They walk into chaos calmly. They grab the extinguisher. Others are still debating the smoke. That is not simple toughness. That is armor. Strong, useful, costly. And in the next few minutes, we take that armor apart. Because what sits under it will surprise you. Stay with us. You know this person. A crisis hits. They do not panic. Others freeze. They make a plan. They solve. They move. It looks like calm. It is not calm. It is training. Carl Jung called it the persona, the mask we wear to survive. Wear it long enough and it feels like your face. The real self goes quiet. Gen X built strong masks. They built them young. When you are 8 and no one is home, you cannot fall apart. Falling apart needs an audience. It needs someone to catch you. They learned not to fall. They stood up straight. Freud warned about suppression. Push-down feelings do not vanish. They shift. They show up as distance, as dry humor. As I'm fine, they show up as refusing help, even when help is needed. This is the return of the repressed. For Gen X, it often looks like strength. But underneath it is old scar tissue, formed in quiet kitchens. Now look at authority. Gen X does not rage at it. They study it. They grew up with Watergate, with Vietnam fallout, with Iran-Contra, with AIDS fear. They learned one rule. Title means nothing. Competence means everything. Do you know what you are doing? That is the only test. Nietzsche wrote about the will to power, not control over others, control over self. Become what you can become. Gen X lives this quietly. They saw loyalty fail. They saw rules fail. So they made a choice. I respect skill, nothing else. This shapes how they lead. They follow skill, not age. A young expert earns respect. An older fool does not. They smile in meetings. They notice everything. They will not pretend. Albert Camus said the honest response to chaos is clear action. See the world as it is. Act anyway. Gen X does this daily. But there is a cost. Ernest Becker wrote that people fear being unseen, not death, being forgotten. Gen X fears this quietly. They were rarely praised, so they stopped expecting it. They became reliable, dependable, invisible. Sometimes they wonder, if no one notices me, do I matter? That question sits under the armor, and it does not fade with age. Peter Wessel Zappi wrote that human awareness is heavy. We know too much. We see too much. So we limit what we feel. Most people distract themselves. Noise, screens, crowds. Gen X chose function. They stayed busy. They stayed useful. Work filled the space. For years, it worked. Then midlife arrives. Kids grow up. Careers level out. Bodies ache. Silence returns. Old questions surface. Was I enough? Did anyone see me? Did this matter? Thomas Ligotti said awareness can feel like a wound. Gen X saw clearly early. They saw flawed systems, flawed adults, a shaky world. That clarity gave strength. It also left marks. Now, here's what matters. Gen X raised children differently. They showed up at games, at plays, at school meetings. They clapped loudly because they remembered silence. Carl Jung called this integrating the shadow, taking the wound and refusing to pass it on. That takes effort. It costs energy. It costs sleep. But they did it. Schopenhauer said real compassion comes from pain. You help because you know. Gen X knew absence. So they chose presence, not from theory, from memory. But giving has a cost. You cannot always be strong and also be deeply known. Walls keep pain out. They also keep closeness out. Niccolò Machiavelli wrote that the middle position carries the most pressure. Gen X is the middle. After the boomers, before the millennials. Old enough for analog, young enough for the internet. They translate between both. They hold tension. They did not ask for this role. They just carried it, quietly. Ernest Becker said, "We need to feel that we matter." So hear this clearly. You built things that still stand. You raised people who feel safer than you did. You showed up in storms without applause. That is not small. Albert Camus wrote that meaning is chosen, not handed to us. Gen X kept pushing the stone. Not because it was easy, because the pushing mattered. It may not need applause, but it deserves to be seen. If this spoke to you, share it with someone who showed up, without asking for credit. They may not say it meant something, but it will. Strength is not loud. Some of the strongest people are the ones who learned to stand alone without applause. Gen X shows us this. Pain does not have to be passed on. You can take what hurts you and choose to build something softer for the next person. You may not be praised. You may not be noticed. But showing up still matters. Real strength is this: to carry the weight and still choose kindness.